Hello and welcome to Monday Motivation. Today I want to talk about the use of the whip. It has been in social media a little bit recently with an eventer who we're not going to name because it's Can-Do Equine page and we don't do that naming shaming business. We're a nice supportive group and everybody makes mistakes, so that's unfortunate. But eventing is not the only place that we see the whip misused. It's also in the media, all the time. It has been for the last couple of years about the use of the whip in racing. And the same thing is applying in both situations. What's happening is, you can't, like nosebands, there's no point in having a blanket rule ban nosebands because it's not the noseband that's the problem, it's the way it's done up. It's tightened. If it's fastened too tightly, it causes the horse stress. The same with the whip. If you tap your horse on the whip to ask it to move forward, for example, that is not a bad thing. It's a great cue. It means you can reach that much further down your horse. Your arms are only so long. If you have a whip, dressage whip, you can reach much further down and tap the horse on the hip. So it makes a really useful cue. But whacking your horse with the whip is a punishment. So one is a useful cue, the use of negative reinforcement. The other one is a punishment. How do we tell the difference? Or, do we just say, oh, all whips are bad, let's get rid of whips? Again, I think it's a real problem doing that. I think it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as we've discussed before, with the use of the round pen. It's not the tool itself, it's the way it's used. So how do we move and when do we move from negative reinforcement to punishment? And they are two things, they seem to be on the same scale. So a lot of people look at it like this. So let's take just the use of the whip, all right? So they might see negative reinforcement as being tapping the horse on the hip to go forward, whereas punishment might mean whacking the horse really hard to make it go faster, as in racing, for example. Now, that's actually it's not really the severity of the hit that makes it either negative reinforcement or punishment. They are different things. You're still using the same tool. They are different things, but it's not the severity of it that makes it different. It's the timing that makes it different. So let's take, for example, the example of, let's say you're loading your horse on the trailer and you've got a dressage whip. And your cue to go forward is to tap the horse on the hip with the dressage whip. So what you do is you lightly tap the horse. You don't wallop the horse. Of course you don't do that, because if you hit the horse, its emotional level is going to go up, and that's not good for getting the horse onto the trailer. We want a nice low emotional level, a nice calm horse. What we want to do is tap the horse hard enough to motivate the horse to do something, so to motivate the horse to move. And that's what the tapping is. That's what the whip is for. It's a motivator. Motivator doesn't need to be nasty or cruel, or doesn't need to hurt, doesn't need to inflict fear or pain. It needs to motivate the horse to move. So it might be for us, it might be like, tapping you on the shoulder or something. When somebody does that, get you to turn around, say, hello there, you turn around. That tapping on the shoulder motivated me to turn around and say hello to that person. The telephone ringing is a motivator, motivates us to pick it up and answer it. All right. In the same way as you clucking at your horse, so like this, is a motivator for the horse to move or to go faster or to change something. So the tapping of the whip is simply a motivator. It's the timing that changes it from being a negative reinforcement to a punishment. So let's look at that quickly. So let's go back to our example of tapping the horse on the hindquarter to move forward, to load it onto the trailer. So we tap, 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 tap until the horse takes a step forward, or maybe even thinks about walking forward, like moves its weight forward a little bit without taking a step, and we immediately stop tapping. That's negative reinforcement. What makes it negative is we're taking away something. And here we're taking away the tapping. So that's all it was. Okay. So it's all in the timing that makes it negative reinforcement. Is we call it negative, which means we take away. When do we take it away? We take it away when we get that forward movement. So it's tied to the response or the behavior we're targeting. So we take it away when the horse steps forward or when the horse moves its weight forward. And therefore we call it negative reinforcement. If we were to be using positive reinforcement, and usually training is a mixture of the two, it's very unusual just to use negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, again, is administered when we get that targeted behavior. So in the trailer loading example, when the horse takes a step forward or moves its weight forward, we might give it a scratch on the wither. And that's positive because it's adding something, whereas negative was taking something away. It's positive because it's adding something, and it might be a scratch, it might be a good boy, it might be a nice word, it might be a stroke on the neck, it might be a handful of food, but it doesn't have to be food just because it's positive reinforcement. It just means to add something that the horse wants. As in, negative reinforcement is take away something that the horse doesn't want. Yeah, so nobody really likes to be tapped. I mean, this is quite annoying. And if that wasn't myself doing it, I'd probably hit the person that was doing it. So we're taking away something that the horse doesn't want. It also doesn't mean it needs to be painful or bad or negative in any other way. So it's about the timing. So what happened with this eventum, what happens with racing, and what makes the whip punishment in this situation is, again, about the timing. It's not actually about the severity. And there's been a lot of discussion about the severity of the hitting, both in this recent event as well as in the racing. And, you know, we've done, people have done some tests to see how hard the horse is hit. And it's all very important. You know, it's very important that, you know, we don't hurt the horse. Of course it is. But that isn't what makes it punishment. It's not the severity, because that's something we also can't measure. What makes it punishment is the fact that it's randomly timed. So if you hit the horse, if you give the horse one strike with the whip and you don't get any response from it, then it's completely random. So the horse doesn't know when to expect the hit with the whip. It's just positive punishment. We call it positive because it's adding something. So it's adding a strike of the whip, but you're not expecting any real result from that. In fact, they've shown actually that racehorses go slower when you hit them with the whip, probably because they're thinking about what's happening behind them. But, you know, they're not sure why, but they do. It doesn't make them go faster. So, you know, it's all really, really not a good deal. But that's what makes it punishment. It's the timing. So if you're using negative reinforcement, or if you think you're using negative reinforcement and your timing is bad, then you're using punishment. And it's important that you sort of understand that timing thing. We all talk a lot about pressure release, but pressure release is a easy thing to say, oh, I use pressure release. You know, that's great, but when do you release? You know, how good is your timing? Because if your timing isn't good, you're using punishment, not negative reinforcement. Pressure release is negative reinforcement, but it turns to punishment when it's not timed well. So let's say, for example, you're teaching your horse to move its hips to the fence. Now there's a lesson that, you know, I teach a lot of horses that lesson, and I use a light tapping on the hip as the cue to move the hips. If a horse moves the hips and I continue to tap, that light tapping becomes punishment, because I'm adding something, the horse has already responded, and I'm not going to release that when the horse responds correctly because my timing is bad. And I always used to say that to get a horse to learn something, you need a certain number of good repetitions. And a good repetition is when you release at the right time. So if you're doing trailer loading, back to our trailer loading example, if you stop tapping the moment the horse moves its weight forward, or the moment the horse picks that foot up to step forward, then your timing is great. And your horse is going to learn that lesson probably in 20 minutes. You know, most horses that have never been on a trailer learn that loading lesson in 20 minutes. You have longer if your horse has had a bad experience, but let's say 20 minutes or less to teach your horse to load on the trailer with good timing. Then I always say, if you miss that, if you miss that release moment, then you need another possibly 10 good repetitions to make up for that one you missed. So let's say you're going along quite well, you've done a few good releases, your horse is thinking forward, and then you start talking to somebody else and you don't notice that the horse has thought forward, or the horse has shifted its weight forward, or actually picked up the foot to walk forward, and you miss it and you keep tapping. Then now the horse is getting confused, because before it was getting that release and now it's not. So it's going to cause some confusion, and that's going to set you back. So you need to go back and concentrate again. I often liken it to going to the gym. You know, let's say you paid a personal trainer. You're paying him, I don't know what you pay a personal trainer, $50 an hour or something, right? And this personal trainer is there to watch you on those weight machines, make sure you're lifting it properly and doing everything right. Now, if he's concentrating on you 100%, you're going to be pretty happy about that, because you really do want to get this right. You don't want to have to spend your $50 again. You don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to be injured. Now, the horse is like that. So he really needs you to concentrate when you're teaching something, because if you don't, and if you're chatting on the phone to somebody or doing something else, mentally doing something else, your horse is doing all these things and you're probably not releasing at the right time. So it's very important that you concentrate on your horse just as much as you're expecting your horse to concentrate on and learn that lesson. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Training Tuesday, and I'm going to come to you from inside the Can Do Equine training, and I'm going to continue this discussion about positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment, and to see how we can make sure that we're using negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement and not the same two things with punishment. I'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.